Well, hello and welcome to the Photo Brigade podcast. I'm Robert Kaplan, and my guest today is Rolling Stone Deputy Photo Editor, Sacha Lecca.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, Sacha? Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us today.
Sure.
I'm really pumped to have you on the podcast again. You were actually my podcast guest number 20. Way back in the audio days, right?
Right.
So now we're going to actually make some visuals happen, and we're going to be able to show some of your photos, which is extra cool. But before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to Adorama's event space, which is where we're hosting this live event, and we host a lot of our live events at the Adorama event space. You can check them out at adorama.com/events. And you can also watch all of our Photo Brigade events like these at photobrigade.com/live. We do podcasts. We do. You've actually been on one of our. You showed your work.
Yeah, we were here before.
Yeah, this is not your first time here.
I'm a pro at this.
Yes, this is your third time with Photo Brigade. So thanks also to Canon Professional Services. You guys rock for all that you do, and as well as Temba Bags. Okay, with no further ado, let's get to you.
All right.
So, Sacha, we're going to go over a lot of the same sort of stuff that we've done in the past. Done in the last episode 20, which is now, I think this is going to probably be about number 90, so it's been a while back. And I'm sure a lot of your answers might have changed a bit over the last couple of years. We'll see. We'll see. But let's go dive into your background a little bit so people know how because right now you're a photo editor, but you're also a photographer. You take really great photos. It's on your Instagram feed, Sacha Lecca.
Yes.
On Instagram. Check it out. It's always posting amazing band photos. But let's talk about your background. I know your parents were photographers. Tell me about that.
Yes, they're still photographers, and they're both working in the fashion industry, primarily doing runway photography, and they've been doing it for many decades. To the point where they're both very well regarded, still in demand for their services, and in fact, they were going to be here, but they're working.
Okay. Where are they working right now?
Well, right now they're not shooting, but they're receiving a ton of requests. So they're at home. They're at home in Queens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they're working. So
just because that's that time of year when they
I
get
don't know.
together?
It's just it seems kind of random. I think that even when they're not doing shows, they'll get a magazine requesting some photos still.
Nice.
Which is great.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you started in fashion then a little bit yourself?
Well, I started working with them early on, and when they were still shooting those shows just with film cameras, and when a lot of photographers were shooting color negative, my father was shooting chrome because it was much faster to process, and actually you can dupe it much easier, and that way you can cover a lot more clients at the same time. And so I learned a lot about my photography through my father and my mother, especially shooting film. And we had a darkroom in our basement.
The old darkroom in
the
the basement.
darkroom in the basement,
Yeah.
And so I was shooting my own shooting black and white and processing it and printing, and even printing my dad's work for ads and stuff too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Really? So they did ad work.
It's from time to time. I remember an ad campaign for Joan and David shoes, or even either for their own ads for magazines or for in-store displays, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we also you were learned from them. You're a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Which is cool. How did you get into editorial photography?
It was completely by accident. I actually went to school to become a curator at museums, and my first real job was at the Guggenheim, and I was giving tours. I was having a blast there, and then I got an opportunity to work at Newsweek, and it was 1994, and it was a really exciting time to be there, and I started really in a very low position at something called the traffic desk, which doesn't exist anymore.
Traffic desk. Tell me a little bit about the traffic desk.
It's actually when you are basically receiving all the film that's coming into the publication, and you have to make an account of it, and when it comes in, and an account when it goes out. So everything matches up, because every slide, every roll of film, every strip of negative has a certain value attached to it, and we had to be very careful not to lose anything. I think this job doesn't exist anymore because most things come in now digitally, of course.
Right.
And so, yeah, I went from there, and I then became a researcher, and then a photo editor there, and then senior photo editor there.
And you worked back then in the Newsweek days. It was Jimmy Colton?
Yeah, it was under Jimmy at first, and then I might need help. But Simon Barnett, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah, Simon
John
Barnett.
Philo for a short time, who's now at CBS. Simon's at CNN. So yeah, but for most of my time there under Jimmy Colton and Guy Cooper.
Nice.
So,
Who are we
yeah.
asking help from over here?
That's my wife.
Oh, hi. Okay. Understood.
Yeah, who works over at Time Magazine.
Oh,
But she
okay.
was at Newsweek at the same time. So we have the same scars.
Oh, okay. Understandable. And so you've now been working in the editorial world for, I know that back when we did our last podcast, it was 20 years. So you're, what, 22 years now?
Yeah, that would be about 22. Well, next year, 22 years, I guess. I started January, I remember it was January 4th, 1994, I guess. And so...
The good old days.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And it was I think, a much better time for photographers,
Yeah.
for editorial photographers
Yeah.
in particular. 'Cause I know that's it's a tough gig to have. And I've been enjoying your podcast recently, who kind of addressed those issues of how difficult it is these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm gonna jump back into the editorial world. So you started at Newsweek, you worked your way up. Tell me how you got to your current position where you are at Rolling Stone.
I left Newsweek to go to a.
Don't be afraid of it.
Sorry. It's very alarming.
It's a big microphone, I know.
I went to a company called CMP, which has a lot of business publications, and they're not on newsstand. It's more of a trade publication. They were giving me an opportunity to kind of manage the photo departments there and sort of do what I wanted. And because the sort of tech financials were doing really great at the time, this was around 2000. And then, as sort of that stock market tanked, my budget kind of went away, and so it became less of a creative place to work. So I was looking for a change, and Rolling Stone was looking for someone to supplement the work that's done on sort of the non-music features there. And since I had a news background, they brought me on to work on those, which is the national affairs, any news, any of the amazing long form journalism that gets done there, and to just dedicate someone to edit those pieces.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You ended up having a position that was sort of opposite of what most people think of the Rolling Stone photo editor doing.
It had nothing to do with music at all. But then it's hard not to sort of learn on the job there, and as magazines are hit hard, and we lost some people, and we were a staff of about 7 at the time, and now we're just 3. So we all work on everything.
You're down to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And are you doing the work of 7?
Oh yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. Actually, maybe even more in my judgment. But
oh man.
So yeah,
it's rough.
So it's rough. So yeah, there's it's a grind, but I can't lie. I love working there. It's still an exciting place to work. The coverage of there's some things obviously I'm less excited about, but the feature writing there is still pretty amazing. And so yeah, my coworker and myself we still get super psyched just to be there. And that's, if I didn't feel that way, I would be looking for something else. Yeah.
Understood. Well, maybe this is a good segue so that we can get into some of your photos so that the viewers can see what it is that you're made of.
All right.
Because you're not just a photo editor. You take the pictures.
I take some pictures.
And you've. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to let you go ahead and control. Just hitting next. But these are your photos from going out. And you said this is mostly from the last year.
This is the last year, and I've always taken pictures since I was 12, and it's always been a way for me to kind of connect with a situation. And I actually grew up terribly shy. And it was always handy to have a camera because then I was just the guy with the camera. I don't need to talk to you guys. I'm taking pictures. You know, this is what I'm doing, and that's kind of like was a safety net in a way. And so it never had a real. I just shot everything. And I think that my Instagram feed, in a way, is sort of a good example of just.
Should we open your Instagram first instead?
Sure.
Maybe we should show that. But you've got tons of work. You can open whatever you'd like here.
Well, I mean, it just right at the moment, it just or the last few years anyway, it's just whatever I was doing. I mean, in last year, for instance, I shot a lot more. I mean, I shot a lot of bands this year. That's what I did this year. But and last year I did the same, but in a different way. And I shot a lot more street photography. I shot a lot more skate photography that I was involved with, but. It's either my work schedule or the health of my back, you know, that will allow me to skate or not. You know? So like I had a really bad injury this year, and so I haven't skated this year, and so that's why there's nothing on my feed. But
you're very popular on Instagram. I mean, I'm just noticing, you know, you've got way more likes than I ever get.
Well,
hundreds of likes.
There was a Instagram has this lovely habit of pointing out certain people and putting you on like not a preferred, but what's it called? Like a suggested user.
Suggested users.
You know, and so when they first started, they would leave these people on for like months, and so there's like people with horrible accounts, no offense to, but with 500,000 followers, you know. But then they did it very smartly, I thought. They had a rotating list, so people would be on for like a week or a week or two, and I got on for a couple weeks, and so it's kind of a high number of followers, but it's I don't think that the amount of likes are indicative of that.
Here.
You know, but
46,600 followers.
It's not that much.
Well, I mean, okay, everything's relative, right?
It's very relative.
But I mean, so it's an interesting thing. You know, we talk about Instagram and social media these days, right?
Yeah.
And what value that has. And it can be argued that this has pretty decent value, that you're gaining all of these likers. You know, who knows? You know, maybe a couple years from now or years from now, you might be doing something on your own, and you've got a subscribership. You know, these are people that
yeah, I think that
work.
46 though is kind of a false number in a way because of that suggested user. It's like a lot of like, you know, kids that, you know, joining on the other side of the, you know, like from Jakarta. I have like all these 8-year-old kids from Jakarta who follow me, you know, but they don't like any of this stuff.
Right.
You know? So I think they just like were signing on at the time when I was a suggested user. So like it's a little inflated.
But you know what? So it's an interesting
I'm trying
thing.
to be, you know.
Okay, so that's very humble of you.
Yes.
But the reality is that, you know, kid from Jakarta is a kid from Jakarta now. He might be an international businessman in 10, 15 years
Sure.
or something, you
Yeah.
know, and hires you to, or I don't know.
I didn't think about it that way.
And one of the things that's interesting is when I was touring with Bieber, right?
Yeah.
I got all these teenage girls following me.
Right.
But those girls grow up, you know? Oh, that sounds bad. That's not how I
Where
meant
are you
it.
going with this?
But I mean, those
Yeah.
you know, young kids grow up and they become consumers of work. So you never know where one thing can lead. And
Yeah.
It could come from a Twitter follower, it could come from an Instagram follower.
You're
you
absolutely,
really never
you're
know.
absolutely right. And actually, I was going to ask you about that experience later on if we ever, you know, if we get to it, about just shooting music yourself, because that's an intense experience.
Yeah.
that I've never actually had in terms of going on tour with anyone. It's actually a very rare thing.
Yeah.
Especially. Well, it's actually not that rare, but it's rare for a publication to make that
Definitely.
assignment anymore.
Definitely.
You know, because it's a lot of days and
Yeah.
hard to kind of control.
It was sort of a right place at the right time sort of situation.
But that was for him, or when you did
It
that?
was originally for him. I pitched a book
Ah.
project, and then I got a deal through HarperCollins to go for a couple of weeks, and then I ended up just saying, "Hey, I should stay on," and just stayed on, and it turned into a big thing.
You heard a lot of screaming.
Oh, I heard a lot of screaming. That's for sure. Earplugs were the most important thing on tour.
That's the number one question I get from friends. It's like, "Are you protecting your ears?"
Do you use protection?
I don't.
You don't really.
I don't. I haven't. I did once.
He's like, what?
I
What?
I think I'm very lucky because I have to start because I'm definitely going. I've been going out a lot more than usual, and there's one band in particular known for being particularly loud, but like louder than loud. I mean, just
Right.
ridiculous loud,
Obnoxiously loud.
And my wife Michelle and I were in the front, and just before they went on, like literally everyone just pulled earplugs out of their pockets and put them in, and we were the only ones without them. And I'm like, oh.
If the fans put on the earplugs.
So Michelle, thank you. She ran and got me a cocktail napkin and threw it at me. And I shoved it in my face.
Well, the interesting thing is that sound techs were saying on the tour, on the Bieber tour, was that they've done Metallica, they've done these crazy loud bands, but it's the decibel. It's the pitch. Teen girls.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the pitch is just so loud. The pitch, whatever it's called. Yeah. Sorry about that, audio people.
Well, we'll go through some of these pictures.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, you very kindly picked this photo as a banner for the event, and this is of Fat White Family, a band who I really enjoyed and still enjoy tremendously. This was this particular night. There's a really great photographer here named Gretchen, who was right next to me here, and I thought for the longest time that was you. In the it's not you though. No, it's not. But you're actually closer. There was a lot of great photographers besides Gretchen there. There's over on the left. There's a guy named Daniel Tapete. He's really good. There was myself. There was a guy shooting for Maxim that night who I never saw. I don't know how he did it, but his pictures of that night are really, really great, I have to say.
And who were you shooting for at the time?
This was for me. And that's that's the difference from a lot of the work I was doing in the last couple of years. Specifically, Rolling Stone might ask me to shoot a show or cover an event, and but then I got more interested in some other bands that necessarily weren't on their radar yet, and I've been doing a lot more of that and pushing that at work, and some of them end up getting in the magazine. Fat White Family got in last year in the hot list, which was very exciting for me.
And a lot of bands know who you are now. I mean, just that you are a photo editor.
Some actually, even in this picture, the guy with his arm around Leas there, I'm pointing to this gentleman here. I think, is that Kevin? I'm asking Josh. Is that Kevin Walker? Do you know who Kevin Walker is?
Oh yeah.
That's him, right? Yeah. Okay, so it might be. So it's a very, it's not a small group of people, but it's a very tight community of artists who play at various venues around town, and everyone knows each other, and they're all lovely people.
Right.
The guy on drums is who I'm talking about here. That's Kevin. This is a band called Acid Dad, who I've only met a few months ago, actually, even though the Fat White Family image was much earlier. This was for work. There's a band called Drenge from the UK.
I know that probably a lot of people will be asking this online and whatnot, but what sort of gear do you use when you shoot usually?
I'm not a really big gear guy. I have essentially a camera that suits me in low light situations. Right now that's the Nikon D750. Often I'll just have a 35 1.8 lens on it, and
a strobe.
And it's still sometimes not enough light in some of these places, so I'll just use either the on-camera flash, I'm embarrassed to say, but I do have a really nice Nikon flash, which I forgot the name of, on a cable, which then I'll use sort of off camera,
yeah.
Or on my belt or something,
Sure.
so for interesting effect. But I much prefer just pushing the limits of the camera.
Yeah, more documentary.
And yeah, like this was pretty dark, and it just comes off. I think the digital grain on this is really nice.
Do you keep up with these musicians? Do
yeah.
they usually see your photos?
Yes. There's an example of that coming up. But I mean, a lot of my favorite bands, I feel like I would consider myself to be very friendly with, and we communicate all the time. This was a Blur, which when he threw water at me, but that was also for work.
I remember shooting something for the Times one time, and it was one of these really hardcore bands, which you probably see all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And the first thing they did was take a beer can, crack it open, and shake it all over. And I was like, nope.
That's what you're into. Well,
Nope.
with Blur, this was at Madison Square Garden, and they had a guy come out and just tell everyone, like, he will throw water at you. He will throw water.
This is a warning. Okay, yeah.
Just so. This was actually just on Friday. There's a band called Foals, which was the first band I ever shot for Rolling Stone in 2008. We just happened to be in London, and they were playing there. They were from there, and Rolling Stone had just covered them as a band to watch, or breaking. And so I asked, "Can I shoot the show?" And they actually said, "Yeah." And like, "You want all access?" I was like, "Yeah."
Why not?
Why? And I didn't even know what that meant.
Does that include catering?
It did. There was a lot of
Because that's the most important part.
there was a lot of stuff. Let's just say
There was a lot of stuff.
And there was they're very sweet, but I didn't even know. Like at one point, the tour manager said that you can go on stage with them. I'm like, what? So
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was a learning experience for me. But I followed them since, and they played Friday, and they oddly enough gave us the last 4 songs to shoot, and I think it's because they really kick in their show into high gear at that point, and that's the singer jumping off the second
balcony,
floor.
yeah.
Do they? And you asked me, do they see the images? Even like a band of they're pretty well known. The singer directly, his own personal feed, he liked my picture, and they've since posted it as well. Hopefully, Rolling Stone will too this evening on their own Instagram. I included this just because I wanted to show kind of how ridiculous it is to be at a show sometimes with camera phones. I don't think I've ever seen as many phones at once at a show. This is for a small, thank you.
Water.
A small, I don't know, it was a secret show, but it was for the rapper Future, who was not for, it wasn't personal work, it wasn't for the magazine, but my sister works with Future and got me in. And so it was kind of like a really cool photo op for me. I've never shot like a hip-hop show like that, and it was pretty great. There's so many phones.
Yep.
There's a band called Honduras.
I wonder what it'll be in the future. That right now it's phones. You can tell what sort of year it is. It really dates the picture.
Yeah.
In 20 years, people are going to look back and be like, "What are those things?"
One of the craziest images I've ever posted that I got a lot of reaction for was at a concert 2 years ago, and everyone just flipped out because no one had a phone up, and that's what was so alarming to them. Ice Balloons. A very fantastic band. This is another band who I've been following a lot, and they finally got some play in the magazine, and so it was good to have the relationship already with them. And
you're almost like an incubator. You kind of like get these shots of them. You see who's up and coming, and then
yeah. I mean, but also I actually there's certain bands that I like a lot, and so it's not like I'm a reviewer by any means of all music, but there's just a kind of music, style of music that I'm attracted to, and they're very unlikely fantastic group.
So what would your advice be to a photographer who wants to shoot this kind of stuff, who really loves music and wants to get in? I mean, you're able to sort of exploit the relationship you have with the Rolling Stone, which no matter what, you are who you are, so people will see that.
Yeah,
but what about for younger photographers?
I think actually it helps. It can help, obviously, but for a lot of what I'm showing is they're all at smaller venues where there's no photo pass that you have to procure. There's no first 3 songs and no flash. It's open to anyone with a desire to take a picture, and it's always surprising to me that there's so few people doing that, because these are all such visual, locations and bands, and it's a really exciting time at the moment as well. And certainly when I do go, I'm not the only photographer. There's a number of any given photographers, but
sure.
I also feel like one of the worst things that you can do when you're enjoying music is stick a camera up to your face and kind of see it through that. You're kind of removing yourself from the situation, and it always bothers me. And so I try to shoot a little bit and then really get into it, and then maybe shoot a little bit more and stuff like that. There's more. See, this was for work. It's Mac DeMarco at home. Mac DeMarco at work.
Oh, that's cool. I like that shot.
Well, this is actually like
Were you ready for that shot? Like you knew that was coming?
I usually do my YouTube research, but for some artists, just to see where everyone's going to be standing.
How
and
about
what
that?
actually takes
That's
place.
important.
A lot of people do that. You guys do that, yeah.
You YouTube research your bands before you shoot?
Absolutely. So I actually wanted to get to this show much earlier, and I couldn't. And there was no photo pit that night, and he's got some really incredibly excitable fans, and there was just no way I was going to get into the front. But I had a spot up on the balcony, and I knew he was going to do this, so I thought, well, I'm going to get that, and it turned out to be a really great shot.
Nice.
Yeah. Just to sort of continue to answer your question, there's a certain amount of dedication that's required, I think, if you want to be a music photographer, especially in New York, not only because of the competition, but because of the amount of great music there is. And so it's something that feels like it should be kind of very easy to do. You just go and take pictures, but there's a lot of legwork. There's a lot of post-production stuff, and it's long hours. I have a day job, and
Right.
there's some weeks that I work until late into the night. It's just, where Rolling Stone comes out every 2 weeks, and so that second week is almost impossible for me to do anything. So my going out and trying to just enjoy myself by taking these pictures are often on those first weeks. So I miss a lot. So there's, I'm definitely not kind of covering a particular moment in time as much as I'd like to. So yeah, basically you have to go out every night. Sorry, this is a band called the Mystery Lights, who I'm really fond of, and they're coming out with their first, I think, LP early next year, and I got to know them pretty well, and so they invited me to their recording session, and that's something I kind of wanted to do, and this was actually at Daptone Records. And it was really cool to see this happening. That's them live.
So that was them behind the scenes
Yeah.
at the recording a record. How'd you get that access? I mean, did you know they were doing this? Did they call you up? Or?
I kind of heard about it. We were all hanging out after one of their shows, and the sound engineer, a very well-known guy, was with them that night. And between him and them, they said, you should come by.
I think that's one of the keys. My limited time in the music industry, I don't really do much anymore in the music industry, but it's making those relationships and just one thing leads to another. I mean,
the part of how I got to know them is that they were opening for the Fat White Family. They've been around a while, and I just didn't know them. But when they opened for Fat White Family, it was one of the best things I'd seen, and I think they played 20 minutes, and I found an email. I just told them, I said, I have to see you again. And so I've only missed a few of their shows, and they play a lot.
One of the things I'm also noticing is they're all black and white.
Yeah.
Is this
that's a personal?
Do you do it in post, or do you shoot it in black and white?
I do it in post. I shoot raw mainly. I used to shoot with an Olympus that had a black and white setting on, which I really liked. But the cameras can't actually handle the light that I'm dealing with. So I basically just now shoot raw, and I convert in post. These are all the same band, different nights. This was in almost pitch black.
I love it when you go to an assignment and it's just pitch black. It's like, come on now.
And that's why now I'm finally getting more comfortable using a flash. As long as I can do something that's not necessarily just flat. But this is a shot of a group called Palma Violets, who is another band who I'll go see anytime, anywhere they play. And very exciting. This was actually shot with a point and shoot.
Oh.
As was the first image that.
And it's you don't need a professional camera.
This was it was a $200 camera. But they had a raw setting in, thankfully. So yeah, I worked with them. That's the same thing, just with a point and shoot. Also, it was they have really crazy shows, and I didn't want to be kicked around while holding a much larger camera. So it was just literally something that just fit in my hand. And I would much prefer to do that every time, but the quality is just not there for what I want to afford.
What's your biggest pet peeve about obviously you shoot a lot of these concerts and you see a lot of different photographers go through. I know that having been on the road and seeing different photographers, their techniques, their styles, their aggressiveness or whatever, does you have like a big pet peeve or what not to do when you're a music photographer?
No. I know that there's Facebook groups dedicated to this, and I can't read them because it's just so much complaints.
Oh yeah, I hate complaining.
That's why I don't like Facebook, but in general. But I mean, New York's a pretty big market, and so when I shoot at a large venue or a small venue, there's certain people I'm going to see, and after a few times, you kind of recognize them, and everyone seems to know each other, and everyone's really cool with each other. And when I read the comments from people working on the markets about like some guy, I mean, there's obviously if you're holding like your camera up and you're blocking someone, that's not cool. But
right.
I mean, that doesn't really happen that much.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's really cool and make room for everyone else. And everyone knows that they're all have to get their shots. And so yeah, I've never had an issue with that at all. I've never seen anything really ugly. To be honest, there's a newish venue called the Gateway in Brooklyn with amazing. I was gonna say ridiculous, but it is kind of amazing. The light setup, very difficult to shoot, but it made for a nice picture. This may have been the most exciting thing I saw all year. This is Saul from Fat White Family, who has a side project called Warm Doucher, and this was like a combo of like his side project and Paranoid London and other guys, and it was sort of, they made it up 2 days beforehand that they were going to do this, and it was the most bizarre night of music I ever saw, and very
that's a lot for you to
underattended.
say.
Yeah, it was thrilling. It was absolutely thrilling. I was just talking about it this morning. This is also from that night. It just like they kind of just made stuff up and went for it, and it was amazing. This is Stromae. This I benefited.
Some great visuals there, huh?
Well, that's from the YouTube research.
Oh.
The first 3 songs of his show is very formatted and became clear when I looked it up. So this is a shot I knew I just wanted to get, and I was ready for it. And he's very graphic. He's also very lean and very angular himself, and with all these lines and the patterns on his jacket, it just made sense to take. Excuse me. It's another group we've been following around called Sunflower Bean. They've just got a new record out. Hopefully, they've gotten some coverage in Rolling Stone too. Hope for more. It's them again.
Well, I mean, it seems like you just have a lot of fun. I mean, it's a perfect job for you.
Yeah. Well, and this is again, this is for me mostly the whole first 3 songs at large venue is fun indeed, but it can be a little limiting in terms of what you want to do in terms of shooting an artist, and my wife was just pushing me to just go out and shoot more of these bands that I actually enjoy seeing, So yeah, this is a group called Surfboard, who are one of my favorite bands as well, and so exciting to watch, and like the coolest people, and always do give wild shows, and this was just a couple weeks ago.
So it looks like you're having fun with your flash.
This is the flash on my belt because it was so dark.
So you just have it sticking on your belt.
I had it wrapped around. Right here.
Right in your crotchal area.
Right, it was a crotch shot, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which crotch flash.
Which was made for an interesting effect. It didn't work for every thing I was doing, but I think it was. That's me. That's just holding it off.
Just
to
doing something
the
different.
side. Rather than just be flat. And that's without flash. This is just with on-camera flash. That was a particularly wild night.
Looks like it.
Which ended in a fight.
Hey, not with photographers though.
No.
Okay, never photographers.
It's them again and again. That's
there's the fight.
Well, this is that's
that's
Mike.
just normal.
That's Mike from the Mystery Lights. Actually, just getting smashed by Danny, the singer. As well, this that is the full frame. I wish I had more of that, but sometimes when they're just jumping at you, it's kind of hard.
You just got to learn to go with it. With the
and kind of going with it.
yeah. Very cool.
More of them. I think we closed with this is Tall Juan. There was a great music blog called Oh My Rockness who lists. It's a really great resource for New York music, and they just put out a blog of the people who worked the most this year in terms of musical artists, and I think all these people are on there somewhere.
Right on.
Tame Impala. It's Thunder Bitch, if I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, you can say Thunder Bitch. I'll say it quietly, Thunder Bitch.
And but this this is Brittany Howard from Alabama Shakes. This is her side project, and she saw this photo when I posted it, and so their publicist reached out to me
through Instagram.
She saw it through Instagram.
Right.
Yes, she did. And then so her publicist reached out to me, but through the venue, who I've been talking. They've also been reaching out to me too, 'cause from other things I've done there. And they liked what I was doing, and they said, anytime you want to come in, just because they actually do restrict cameras there. They'll try to, and so they give me that, whenever you want to come in, just give me a heads up. And so that's how
Cool.
it works.
Very cool.
U2.
U2, they're a bigger band, one of the bigger ones. Small band from Ireland.
Yeah. I'm like.
So the difference between shooting a U2 and shooting at a bar.
Well, that was super
Lower East Side.
restricted. Kevin Mazur had the front access, and everyone else was on the side, which did not surprise me. But it was. But I always feel like no matter where you are, even if you're in one of these bar situations and you're in the back, there's the photo. There's a good photo you can take.
Yeah.
No matter where you are. So this
So
was.
don't complain. Just shoot. Just make the best of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're there to cover every aspect of it, then you might have a problem. But if you're just there to make a nice picture,
Right.
you can do it.
Right.
Like this is not a performance shot. I actually saw that they were. This is a band called Wolf Alice, and they were walking off stage in front of this big, strobe, and so I just.
Those are honestly my favorite shots. The in between shots.
Yeah.
The shots that aren't. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about shooting concerts, it's like shooting sports in a way. It's everything's happening in front of you for the most part. You can be creative, of course, but catching those behind the scenes off moments, I think, is
A singer at a mic, is not always. It's not always going to be an enduring image. I mean, it can be, but it's not always. So I try and just get a different kind of unique take. And for instance, if there's a smoke machine, I'm so happy. This is my favorite thing to do. This is a band called Worthless, and just the smoke was kind of hitting the crowd pretty properly, just framing them
right.
while they were playing. So it's not even a shot of the performance, really, just the setting. But I'm trying to do more. I think these are just extra stuff.
All right. So we're going to be getting in now. So, that's how we wanted to segue back into photo editing, and we're going to go through a lot of your some jobs that you've worked on, and I'm sure you'll talk a lot about those. But let's how do you choose what photographers to use? Like you said, I mean, the last time we spoke, you were working more on the outside. You weren't hiring photographers necessarily for shooting bands. You were doing
No, not me specifically. My coworker Griffin Lotz manages the front of the book, where that's where most of that content would arrive. Would arise, and so I do. That being said, this is Joanna Newsom, and this is a portrait I assigned. But it's. But in terms of like live music situations, yeah, it's mostly Griffin.
Okay.
Griffin
Gotcha.
will do that. But I mean, I'm aware of musical shooters, and we talk about it all the time.
Absolutely. So how does a photographer get on your radar, really? Like that's I think one of the more fun topics we talked about in the last podcast.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's many photo editors who aren't just following a lot of photographers on, say, social media, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and so there's a lot of communal sharing of that kind of information amongst editors. Like, oh, you got to check this person out. And,
okay.
so there's definitely talk. And
So do you directly use social media, things like Instagram, to hire a book photographer? Has that happened?
Maybe not to hire, but maybe to take note of. And then I might call them in for a meeting. Or just check out their site from time to time, see how it's changing.
Is that important for you to change up your website? Because I got to be honest, I haven't done mine for 4 years.
It can be, especially, I can't mention any names, but there was something we were trying to sign the other day, and I was sharing some names to my boss, and sometimes similar names come up, and she noted that the sites hadn't changed at all in 3 years. So she wanted to see more, so it's always good to keep changing that, for sure. But we'll also look at other magazines, for sure, obsessively, and I think maybe contests too, when those contest issues come out, and end of year stuff, yeah. They'll take a look.
Wait a second. So tell me exactly what contest you're talking about.
Well, photo annuals. I
Oh,
suppose.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Actual winners of
Yeah.
World Press.
It's
and
usually,
that kind of stuff.
usually the half of the people on that list are people we've been checking out already, and there might be another half that I don't really know so well. So yeah, I'll check them out.
Awards matter. Sometimes
I guess so.
They can get you. They can get you seen. It's
Yeah.
publicity.
Yeah, it's
No
definitely
matter
good publicity.
However
yeah.
you look at it,
Oh
it's good
yeah.
publicity. Do you think it's necessary that a photographer have an award? Do you ever not hire a photographer because
No.
versus someone else because they have an award?
No.
Okay, that's good.
No, it just might be a better way of getting your name out there,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in a little bit to these spreads, and maybe we can talk about who you worked with, how some of these got set up. And
There's not a lot of these, but this is Joanna Newsom, who's a great artist, and it was shot by Christopher Anderson, who had a contract with New York Magazine, and I'd wanted to work with him for a long, long time, but the contract was an exclusive one. So once that was finished, he dropped me a little note on Instagram on one of my pictures, like, call me. So within a couple of weeks, this assignment.
Cool.
Really enjoy his work. And Pari Dukovic is one of my favorite photographers, hands down. Even shooting something as simple as a guy at a deli counter, it's always really special. He's someone who I'd been following for a really long time before we got a chance to use him. And the first assignment he did was actually really good, but it wasn't, I think, the best kind of situation for him, where he can control a lot of situation in terms of the setting and everything. And but we've used him now routinely. Yeah.
Cool.
And it's the kind of thing, it's very hard. Magazines are often very set in their ways in terms of the photographers they use. They get very comfortable. They know who's going to deliver what and how. And so, it's to break into that kind of list, no matter who you are, it's very difficult. And you think Pari is such a natural choice. But it took some time to say, no, you really have to look at his work. And now it's when you're pitching stuff, I don't need to even say anything. I say, I want Pari to do it.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing it is. But this is by Leanne Mueller, who shoots for us a lot out of Austin. She's also in LA. Also, James Minchin is an amazingly creative photographer, shooting Bill Withers for us.
And do you once you find a shooter, do you tend to refer back to that shooter a lot more?
Well,
tell me a little bit, these you've showed me 4 or 5 different people now,
Yeah.
which is great. But is this like they've shot one assignment, or they shoot a
No,
lot?
I didn't. Once they've done something really strong, then it's definitely a lot easier to suggest them in the future. And
That's a beautiful photo.
James takes a lot of. I think I have another portrait by him. He's out of LA. He's just really good at everything, and that's not always. What am I trying to say? In terms of specializing, in terms of a certain look, I think it's always good sometimes when you have a personal style that is uniquely your own, and that's what I think the big difference is. especially when I'm trying to convince my bosses that I want to use a particular photographer, and if their work's sort of all over the place on their website or in tear sheets, then it's kind of harder to know what they're going to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's by James as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think that's important for when somebody, we talked about a little bit, like I said, we keep referring back to the past podcast, but, people will sometimes send you what they think you want to see, but it's more important for a photographer to send you what they want to shoot, how they want to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, in any situation, if I'm hiring a photographer to do something, it's about how they're going to shoot it. It's not, and hopefully that, I mean, not hopefully that there's a reason why that we like their work, and that we feel it suits the magazine. It's going to fit right in, and so you're being hired because of the work that you do. Like if there's someone who says, "Oh, I can do it 8 different types of ways. Just tell me what you want." I'm like, no. I want you to go in there and with your own vision of what this is going to look like, and based on previous.
Do you like getting one of the things I tend to do is a lot of times, I don't know what it's like on Rolling Stone's shoots so much, but a lot of times you have just a few minutes with a celebrity. Do you try to get a lot of variety? I try to, at least.
Yeah, this is Willie Nelson is an example of just a few minutes, and there's maybe like 4 different situations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you should definitely try and do that.
I mean, that stands out a bit. Like if you all of a
If you
sudden
can
have
manage
4 or
that.
5
Oh,
different standout shots.
Well, we were supposed to get I think like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
or something.
right.
We ended up being,
That never happens.
No. This is another by Pari. Really simple, but really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Nice. The burn unit.
I love this. This is after that. We're all a fan of Chris Anderson in The Office. So when he did that Joanna Newsom shot and it looked so great, pretty quickly got him to do our cover of Bernie Sanders. I don't think I have the cover here, but it's. But it was he did a lot. He did a lot of following him around for part of the day too, just for a possible opener. But this is one of them, and it's such a unique view, and I thought it was just so interesting, and I'm so happy it ran. It seems like a lot of people would have just turned that down to run it, but it's so clearly him. Oh, right. This is by a photographer I can't mention.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's
because
this is more. I think we're in the section of more of the non-music features.
Interesting.
And this is a guy. This is the head of the basically the Russian Hell's Angels, the called the Night Wolves.
And so the worry is that if somebody finds out who took the photo,
There were a lot of people taking pictures that day. Let's just say that there's someone who wants to maintain good relationships in that part of the country, and wasn't sure exactly what we were going to say about it.
Right.
So it's actually a very benign story. It's really interesting. This is a story out of Yemen, written by Matthew Akins, who he does a lot of our foreign feature writing. And all the photos by Sebastiano Tamada, but the two of them snuck into Yemen together. It was quite nerve-wracking for a few days there, because they were sneaking in by boat and with a fixer, and weren't sure how that was going to go.
Wow, it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so neat because you don't think so. I mean, if you read it, obviously there are these articles, but you just don't think of these as Rolling Stone. It's
yeah. I mean, if you look even in the history of the magazine, it's there's tons of stories like this that broke a lot of news. Even the political reporting is just pretty top notch, I'd say. And there's these stories of these drug-running teens out of Florida, and convinced them to let us use some photos of them, even holding incriminating weapons. There's a great piece about a guy who's in jail, where I think some DNA cleared him, but he was not being let out, and he was been in jail. I forget if it was 20 years or so, but usually on my part, there's a lot of research with these stories. Either contacting family and friends that might have known them from years ago, or checking out the Philly papers from 25 years ago and finding a shot of the cop who put him away, which I did find. It's actually later. Or the original mugshot when he got arrested, which hadn't been made public.
Right.
Just skip over. It's another story by Matthew Akins. That's by Victor Blue.
So, one of the things we've talked about also in the past is controversial stories and covers and whatnot. Last time we spoke, it was about the Boston bomber who appeared on the cover, a selfie, which you ended up having part in putting up, and that was a big deal. There's been other controversies since then.
There have.
Have you seen any kind of, I don't know, change over since we've last spoken in the way things are dealt with? I don't know. Just what's the world been like there?
I know what you're referring to, and it's not something that I can actually discuss, but I can only tell you that the crew there is really phenomenal, and I'll just leave it at that. But there's definitely a lot more safeguards in terms of checking things out, and so there's been a lot of stories I started working on that just didn't run, and I don't know if it's because the editors didn't find them interesting or there was going to be issues with that or not, but so.
And over the years, over these 22 years you've been working, like, what's the biggest change that would you say in the world of photo editing? I mean, obviously, you mentioned before you were at Rolling Stone, you went through the .com bubble, and that kind of burst, and you can kind of see there's some the journalism world kind of has that bubble, and it popped, and less, talk about that.
I mean, definitely, probably the amount of flexibility we have in terms of assigning. It's pretty tight. I don't have. I know that when we were early in the 90s at Newsweek, where you had a sense maybe something was going to happen in a certain part of the world, you can assign a photographer for a couple of weeks to sort of be on the ground and take photos and just be ready. Like, photos would be ready once like some revolution hits or something like that, and that doesn't happen anymore. And a lot more people are reacting to breaking news or using work by people who have been covering this on their own for quite a while. This being just whatever news event you want to apply to that. But there was even stories of having a photographer on for a month, and he got forgotten about, and he and just called like, "Do you want me to stay here?" And they're like, "Oh, no, sorry, you should come home."
Oh, gosh.
But this is like a month of day rates, which sounds pretty good. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, probably the biggest change, probably more for guys like you, is when people were shooting film, you wouldn't see your own work until it ran in the magazine.
You have to ship that home, and then you would get it by mail, by airmail.
And so I think photographers have a lot more control over what they can do and what they can provide, because they're going to see their work, they can edit it a little bit more, and put their best work forward. I know one of your previous podcasts was with Ron Aviv, and there was even like a time at Newsweek where he was working with us, where he would send his film and call from whatever war zone and say, "How's it look?" And you're describing your Ron Aviv's film to him, and it was really interesting. There was one time when I think he must have had a lens that was failing him because every other roll was just completely out of focus, and he didn't know that. And then finally that kind of alerted him to a problem and kind of fixed it. But that's the kind of thing you'd find out about right away.
Yeah. Nowadays with digital, I mean, it's just a different world.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think, is there anything that we haven't really talked about that we should bring up? Because I think that we've done a.
I don't know if you want to.
You just ended your photo. That was your last photo too. It was perfect.
Yeah. If you want to get questions from anyone.
Oh yeah. Are there any questions from the audience? If there's any questions, just let us know. You can raise your hand and yell it out. But it doesn't look like it. There's no questions for you. I've done all the question asking. That's fine. But let's just go ahead and make sure everyone knows it's they can find you at Sacha Lecca, SachaLecca.
Yeah.
On Instagram, Facebook, all that.
Yeah, and I think just because the casual way we're talking, I don't know if I finished answering every question, but in terms of reaching out to photo editors at magazines in particular, I think it's probably best to certainly email, and certainly then follow up with a call, but don't email 3 times in a week, as someone has been just done to me.
Don't look desperate.
It's not about looking desperate. It's just there's often, from my perspective, I have to say it seems like it should be a fairly easy thing to know that you can just send your work to someone, but it's actually not that intuitive thing. And if there's a young photographer who wants to reach Rolling Stone, they might not know that you can just send an email and say, here's my work, and that's all it takes. I mean, it's easier to reach us on email versus phone now. I don't know why that is, but it's easier for me to kind of manage what I'm looking at on through my email, and even if they don't get back to you, please just probably have faith that they've seen it, and it's they'll put a check next to it and think about it later, and just sort of routinely check in from time to time. Don't try to make it happen all in 1 week. And let's see, I guess
Mailers. Last time we talked about mailers.
Yeah, we did talk about mailers. A lot of the thing about mailers, and also about email, in terms of using services that send to large numbers of editors at once, is that I think you're probably wasting a lot of your time and money, but I think it's important to really highlight the kind of publications that you want to reach, and really just do your due diligence and research who works there and send it directly to them, rather than to anyone with the word photo and editor in their title.
And people can do their YouTube research now, because they can check out this podcast.
There you go.
And learn all about you.
Yes.
So, YouTube research, people. It's important. All right. Well, thank you, Sacha, for coming. And everyone else, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Oh, I forgot to say that at the beginning. Subscribe to our YouTube page, because we're going to be putting up tons of podcasts, tons of events, and also a new little television show concept we're going to be doing soon. I'm excited to start that. Also, thanks again to Adorama, Canon Professional Services. Thanks all of you for coming and watching this. And Sacha,
thanks.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
See you all again next time.
Thanks.
Bye.